and I was interested in ceramics. I had studied ceramics in Japan, so I thought, okay, well, maybe I'll go into that. But on the other side, I had the opportunity to go to MIT in urban and regional planning. And
Wow.
our family, my father was involved in urban and regional planning. He was actually the first planner for Boulder, Colorado. So Boulder High School at that time was kind of a little bit of the Wild West. We just to complete the high school experience between junior year and senior year, three other buddies and myself, I bought a truck, a Dodge Power Wagon, and we drove to Alaska and back. And so that was part of the inkling of why I ended up at World Campus Afloat in Japan and so forth and so on.
For the last 25 years at Stanford, what's your single most favorite thing about teaching that class for the last 25 years?
Oh, the best part of that class is to watch a student come in and give a introduction talk, a 90-second introduction talk of another student, and they're basically horrible.
Mm-hmm.
And then to fast forward 8 or 10 weeks later,
Watch them develop. Yeah.
yeah, watch them develop, and you saw the results at that
Mm-hmm.
dinner. Some kids obviously do better than others, but
Mm-hmm.
there are some students that make amazing strides in their public speaking ability.
Did you know there's a technology that's actually an app on your phone that uses sound waves to tell your brain what you want your brain to do? We had a young man that was on a guest on our podcast, the Mike Litton Experience, who had a traumatic brain injury. He was sleeping 3 hours a night. He's using NewCalm now and he's sleeping more. Go to newcalm.com, Mike15 promo code. Newcalm.com, promo code Mike15 for an extra 15% off. Go today.
Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience Podcast. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. Mike is passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
Bruce Bean, thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. I was super excited to be your guest on your podcast, SF Commercial Conversations. I think it was a couple of months ago now. And also super excited to come up and hang out with you guys at Stanford. And that was really a lot of fun. Like we talked about before we hit record, everybody has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. So with your permission, we're going to start with where you were born, go up to today. And we want to talk about the amazing things you're doing at Stanford and also in commercial real estate, right? And with your podcast, SF Commercial Conversations. Thanks for being here, bud.
Oh, thank you very much, Mike, for having me on. It has been a mutual kind of love fest here between us, so it's great to be here. I started out born in Boulder, Colorado, the famous Boulder, Colorado,
It's a
outside of
beautiful place.
Yeah, no, it was a fun place to grow up. It was kind of the epitome of the 1950s, 1960s. We would walk to school,
Yeah.
and we would walk home for lunch. It was a kind of wonderful childhood. The kids would all run around the neighborhood free. We were all feral kids, just running around loose, doing all sorts of crazy things. And as I came up through the years, I got into, junior high school, went to Boulder High School, and then I went actually to CU Boulder to their school. Interestingly enough, because I was born and raised in Boulder, I kind of wanted to get out of Boulder to some degree during the college years. So I ended up going on what's called World Campus Afloat. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It was actually run by Chapman College at that time. So it's this boat of about 300 kids running around the world. I mean, we went to Fiji and then, yeah, Australia and India and then to Africa. It was an amazing trip. Just
sounds like it.
Yeah, no, it was crazy. So I got my semester's worth of credits from that, but I came back thinking, I'd really like to stay in one place and be a foreign student in one area. So I actually went on what was designated as the CU, Colorado University Kyoto Seminar on Art and Religion. So I spent
Wow.
a year in Japan during my
Yeah.
junior year. And
Awesome.
I actually had spent some time as my freshman in the architecture school. But at any rate, I came out of that junior year of being in Japan. I actually took, interestingly enough, coming back from Japan, I took what is the Trans-Siberian Express
Hmm.
from Nahotka over to Moscow to St. Petersburg to Finland. It was an amazing trip. And then I went through Europe for a while. Anyway, all fun. I got to my senior year and I went into the counselor and I said, what can I graduate with in another 2 semesters? And they looked through my credits and kind of hemmed and hawed. And they said, well, we've got this degree called East Asian Studies, which basically is the study of Japan.
Hmm.
If you play your cards right, you can get out in 2 semesters and graduate in East Asian Studies. So that's what I did.
So you played your cards right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. For those of you that might be young and in college, you got to figure out the game of how to
Yeah.
make college work for you. But at any rate, I came out of that, and then I had a choice. I could go to Cranbrook Academy. Cranbrook, I don't know if you're familiar with that particular art school outside of Detroit, but a very kind of famous art school. And I was interested in ceramics. I had studied ceramics in Japan. So I thought, okay, well, maybe I'll go into that. But on the other side, I had the opportunity to go to MIT in urban and regional planning. And
Wow.
our family, my father was involved in urban and regional planning. He was actually the first planner for Boulder, Colorado
Ooh,
in
cool.
1952. So anyway, long story short, I spent a year at MIT and I came back and took a summer job, which I thought was going to last for like 3 months. And 12 years later, I was still there. So
that
it was a good
was a
summer job.
long, that was a long couple of
It was a
months.
long summer, long fun summer. So
Longest summer ever.
yeah, exactly. So now we're fast forwarding to 1987, and my wife, who I had met during these years at the summer job, just had gotten a job in San Francisco, and so we took off and moved to San Francisco, and that's when I went into commercial real estate. I started with a small company called the Rubicon Group, which was sort of
Hmm.
a boutique group, and they did, leasing and sales and some property management. But anyway, they um, I worked out of their Mid Peninsula office, or kind of in the Mid Peninsula, which is the peninsula below San Francisco,
Hmm.
between Palo Alto and San Francisco. Any rate, they closed their Mid Peninsula office, and so I went with Cushman and Wakefield. Turned
Hmm.
out Cushman and Wakefield, about a year or two later, closed their Mid Peninsula office, and I said, "Screw it, I'll just go out and be my own broker." So in 1997, I started the Trafton Group, which has
Hmm.
been going ever since. So
Well,
we do leasing and sales and property management. It's a
so
fun little
30 years, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
30 odd years, yeah, later.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
So you mind if I ask you a couple of questions?
oh, sure.
So growing up, who was the most influential person to you?
Well, probably my father, or definitely my father. He was an interesting character. He, as I said, was the first planner in Boulder, Colorado. And I
Right.
don't know if you remember this concept, but there was a concept called green belts.
Yeah.
And he was the first one to implement green belts in Boulder, Colorado, and still to this day, the green belts exist in Boulder. And a lot of the base planning that happened in Boulder was due to his guidance during those early years. And then he
Wow, that's
went
quite a
out.
legacy.
Yeah, oh yeah, and then he went out and started his own planning firm and did planning for a bunch of communities around Colorado and Wyoming and so forth. So it was
Wow.
it was an interesting years to go through.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So you go to MIT for a year. What was that like?
Well, certainly that was probably the most intense year of study I had ever done. Being at MIT, you're surrounded by all these brilliant minds and so forth, brilliant teachers. Kevin Lynch, who kind of wrote the book on how cities are formed was one of my
Mhm.
teachers. So, it was an incredible year. There was a lot of fun and so forth that went on during that year. But I had two roommates from India actually that were with me the whole year, and we kind of lived a couple blocks from MIT in a little small third floor apartment. But it was crazy, intense, and a lot of fun.
Cool. That's cool. Great experience, it sounds like. So you go to school at Colorado. I'm going to back up a little bit. So you go to school at Colorado and you graduate with a degree in Eastern Studies.
Yeah,
So you did a lot of traveling. You went around the world, it
twice.
sounds
Yeah,
like, right? Twice, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So what was your favorite thing about attending Colorado University?
The
The University of Colorado?
the actual university or the whole college experience.
Both.
Ah, well, being at CU Boulder, I mean, I don't know if the listeners are familiar with that campus, but it's got to be one of the most beautiful
Oh,
campuses.
it's gorgeous.
Yeah,
Absolutely gorgeous.
yeah, beautiful campus, beautiful weather. You can go skiing, you can go hiking, you can do all sorts of outdoor activities. Boulder right now is sort of one of those centers of hiking and biking and all
Yeah.
the outdoor activities that you might want. And it's high altitude, so a lot of runners go there to kind of get their high altitude adjustment and so forth. So it's a very fun town to be in, and it's a great place. The college experience, I would say probably my favorite part of it was being in Japan. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know if any of the listeners have spent time in Japan, but it is such a cultural experience that, you really can't imagine how that would kind of change your mindset of how you do things and how you see life and so forth.
We're in 66 countries worldwide now, including Japan. So
Oh,
we have
wow.
people that are listening to us that probably are familiar with what you're talking about. So,
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
so in high school, did you have a favorite subject?
Well, it's funny. My favorite subject was probably drafting. I
Yeah.
know that sounds crazy, but I love to draw things on a board and do that whole thing, and that actually aided me very well as I went into when I was working for this summer job.
Hmm.
He actually did design work for the crazy SNL ramp up during those years.
Yeah.
I mean, we did 23 branches for Midland Federal Savings, and we did a bunch of branches for the National Bank that were in that area. We were kind of in the banking and savings
Yeah.
and loan world. It was just a crazy Mad Men world of two martini lunches and all that kind of thing that goes on. So it was a very fun times. I mean, actually, the first day I went to work for this guy named Jack Beavers for this summer job, we went to Denver. We had lunch with this artist, and her art was to smear paint on naked ladies' bodies and have them, rub up against the canvas. And I thought, this might be a pretty good job. So I stayed there for those 12 years, and probably would have stayed longer if we could have figured out a way to make the San Francisco branch work, so to speak.
Yeah. I got you.
Yeah.
So, so you get into commercial real estate. What was it that propelled you to get into commercial real estate? It's not necessarily something that everybody considers or gets into.
Yeah, no. So I had kind of watched commercial real estate in terms of being from the architectural side and doing all these branches and savings and loans. And so I don't know if the listeners are familiar, but the architects and designers, I think they are some of the hardest working people in the world and the lowest paid people in the world. It's just unbelievable that the talent they have goes into such long hours
Yeah.
and they get such, minor reward for it. And now, of course, it's all changed into CAD
Mhm.
drawings and so forth. So that whole world has completely changed from when I was in it. We bought in 19 what would it have been? Maybe like 1985. We bought a compact computer. Do you remember compact computer?
I owned one.
Oh, you
I
owned one.
owned
Okay.
six up. No, I owned eight of them.
Oh, wow.
I owned
Okay.
eight of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With the
So
little
I'm very
fold up,
familiar with compact.
yeah, fold
I
up
was quite a
front,
customer.
the little like 8x8 screen, and we did 120,000 square feet for the First National Bank of Colorado Springs on that teeny little screen in AutoCAD. And we paid $25,000 for that silly computer and the software. And it was kind of the start of everything that went up from there. But anyway, it was a wild, wild world at
Isn't that
that time.
crazy?
Yeah.
We went through the single greatest organic expansion of our economy during that period, and
Yeah.
then ended up in a $500 billion savings and loan crisis.
Yeah.
I mean, unbelievable, right?
Yeah.
It
The
was
whole
just
thing crashed.
crazy. Talk
Yeah.
about irrational exuberance.
Oh, yeah.
So that was back before that was even a term, right? I'm dating myself. So, so in high school, did you have a favorite teacher?
Oh my gosh. That is an interesting question. I don't know that I had a favorite teacher. Mr. Graff, who was named for the drafting class, was a kind of old, grizzled, 30-year drafting teacher, and he was very meticulous about making sure you kind of did all the lines correct and so forth. So he certainly was a very good influence. There were other art teachers that probably had more influence over me. There was a sociology teacher that was kind of a wild man, kind of 60s type ideas, and he was fun. So Boulder High School at that time was kind of a little bit of the Wild West. We just to complete the high school experience between junior year and senior year, three other buddies and myself, I bought a truck, a Dodge Power Wagon, and we drove to Alaska and back. And so that kind of that was part of the inkling of why I ended up at World Campus Afloat in Japan and so forth and so on. But
Got the bug, did you?
yeah, that travel bug just never went away.
Yeah, that's really cool. I
Yeah.
love that. So you get into commercial real estate. How were your first couple of years in commercial real estate?
Oh, they were. I mean, you talk about MIT being intense. I really thought, having come from the architecture side of the business, I thought that my architecture background would help me with commercial real estate. I could understand space planning. I could tell these people kind of how much space they needed and where they could put everything, all that stuff. They didn't care. Completely useless. I mean, occasionally I'd do a little space plan for some people, but it was basically useless. Whereas I thought it was going to be good. So then I had to learn all about leases and reading leases and purchase contracts and the whole contractual side of real estate, which really was not my cup of tea because I had come from the design and architecture side. So that was pretty tough. And then I I love the fact one of our heads, Mark Terzian, one day he said to me, Bruce, go into electronic arts, go right past the receptionist. Don't even look at the receptionist. Go right past the receptionist and go into the president's office and offer him your services. And I'm like, I can't do that. Are you kidding me? What are you talking about? But that's the type of thing you had to be doing. I mean, one of our friends further south in the valley, in Silicon Valley, she was one of the first commercial real estate agents in the valley, and she basically, in order to get a listing, she sent a guy over in a gorilla suit, and he handed the owner of the property the listing agreement, and she got the listing. That was the kind of wild world that was happening in commercial real estate at that time. So
It doesn't do any good to put your hand up. You got to go barge in somebody's office like, oh yeah. I mean,
yeah.
oh yeah, this is yeah. Well, I mean, I've heard of singing telegrams.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I've heard of all kinds of, a guy that pops out of a cake.
Yeah, right.
Because it's a cake and they're expecting a girl to pop out of a cake. He pops out of a cake and he's a commercial real estate broker and he's got a listing agreement for him. I mean, it's creativity on steroids,
Right.
right? But you do what you got to do,
Yeah. No,
you
exactly.
know?
And it took me a few years to kind of figure out, oh,
Yeah.
this is what sales is all about.
Mhm.
Unlike architectural sales, where it's kind of very, you know, chop chop
Yeah.
approach, the world of commercial real estate is kind of wild and crazy comparatively.
So what's the single most surprising thing you've learned in 30 years doing this that you never imagined when you got into commercial real estate would be true?
Oh my. Well, certainly this whole area that we're talking about, that of sales and what sales means and how to put all the sales together. And of course, sales over this 30-year period has completely changed.
Now, is that sales or is that marketing?
Well, okay. Yeah,
It might
well,
be
you know,
exhibitionism, right?
I think the thing that a lot of real estate agents maybe don't realize is that it's always sales, sales, sales. It's
Yeah.
close, close, close. No
Mhm.
matter whether you're just talking to somebody. I'm talking to a guy from a bank, and I was always impressed. He's always closing me. Okay,
Mhm.
when can we have our next appointment? When can we sign this thing?
Mhm.
It's all these little teeny closes along the way.
Mhm.
And so I think a lot of people getting into this business don't realize that it's close, close, close. You got to go through the steps.
Yeah.
Marketing, that just gets them to the door.
You
You know,
never, never, never stop a conversation or end a conversation without an appointment,
exactly.
right? You never stop, you never end a conversation without whatever the next step is and getting a commitment from them to take the next step. And a lot of people don't understand that.
No,
And it
no.
takes a very long time for them to realize that that really is a big deal. That really is part of the entire process and the way that it works, and intellectually and emotionally and the whole thing. So yeah, it's really an interesting world, especially on the commercial side.
Oh yeah.
I mean, all the commercial agents that I've dealt with in my life, they're just a different breed. They just have a different way about them, and they have a different type of business than what we did on the residential side, obviously. And so I always got a kick out of them. All of them to a T, all of them have these unique things about them,
You know,
and
it,
it's cool.
yeah. No, and at first I was like put off by some of these people that were always the close, close, close people. But then I realized, you know, they're making the deals.
Yeah.
They're getting it done. And you don't have to necessarily be hardcore annoying. There a lot of the good brokers that I've talked to over the year are really very caring. They're closing every minute,
Mhm.
but they're trying to give the client what he needs. They're trying to give them service. They're trying to build that relationship. They're trying to put everything together in a way that's going to kind of get them to the end point that they want.
They're also working to differentiate themselves. And that's something I want people to understand. I know we talk about that a lot, but I want people to understand that when you're in the business of commercial real estate, residential real estate, right,
Right.
you really need to differentiate yourself from the crowd. And there's lots of different ways you can do it, right? You can have a podcast, you can teach, school, you can do all kinds of things. But you want to have a way that you go about differentiating yourself. And sometimes it's always be closing,
Right.
like always stay on task. So we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about your podcast. And we're also
Okay.
going to talk about this amazing public speaking class that you've been teaching for decades.
Right.
I had the honor of coming up and being your guest at dinner, and I want to talk about that experience. We'll be right back. Did you know there's an app that has no side effects that allows you to use sound waves to tell your brain what you want it to do? It's called newcalm.com, and it's amazing. It literally uses sound waves. If you want to tell your brain to go to sleep, if you want to tell your brain to recover, if you want to tell your brain to put you in peak physical state, if you want to tell your brain to focus, if you want to tell your brain to take a power nap, you can do all of these things and more with newcalm.com. Go to newcalm.com today, promo code Mike15. Newcalm.com, promo code Mike15 for an extra 15% off. Go there today. And we're back with Bruce Bean. And before the break, we were talking about your 30-year plus career in commercial real estate and kind of the things that people do to differentiate themselves. At some point in your career, you decided to teach public speaking. And it sounds like it's been quite a while that you've been teaching it, and specifically teaching it at Stanford. Can you talk about what the thought process was to get into that, and then why Stanford?
So, like a lot of things in my life, things happen very serendipitously.
Yeah.
I mean, you can call that any number of things, how that all comes together. But quite frankly, the way this happened was that our son, I'm sorry, our daughter was in kindergarten at Our Lady of Angels Church. We're not Catholic, but it turned out that the Catholic church was half a block away, and my wife said, "I think our kids should go to Our Lady of Angels." I kind of rolled my eyes, thinking of Mike Craven, who was one of my very good friends growing up, and how he had told me about the nuns wrapping his fingers and all that stuff. So I'm kind of thinking, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, so first parents meeting, my wife meets Jim Wagstaff's wife. So, and she comes kind of running home. We'd only been in California a couple of years, and she basically said, "Oh, I think I met somebody that we could be friends with
Mhm.
at this parents meeting for kindergarten." Well, it turns out that Karen Wagstaff, I meet Jim Wagstaff. So all these things sort of come together. There's a group of families that kind of derive from this whole group. They're what we call the six families. Anyway, long story short, Jim and I become good buddies. And Jim, as you know from meeting him,
Mhm.
is kind of a wild man, public speaker, and he always wanted to have a book about public speaking. At that point, he had taught public speaking at Stanford. He had won the National Collegiate Public Speaking Championship when he was a junior at Stanford.
Wow. Wow.
A junior at Stanford. And when he came back to Stanford, they said, "Hey, you're pretty good at this public speaking stuff. Why don't you, you know, teach a
Teach
course
it.
on public speaking?"
Yeah.
So that was 49 years ago.
Yeah.
And so he's been teaching this class for 49 years. We are now next Tuesday. You were at the 144th dinner,
Yeah.
and we will be having the 145th and 146th dinner coming Tuesday and Wednesday. Any rate,
That's
so
just incredible. That just boggles those numbers boggle my mind, you know?
it, it really is quite amazing. So next year will be his 50th year of teaching at Stanford. But at any rate, um, so at one point, Jim talked about doing this book, and I said, "Well, I'll help you put this book together," being kind of a project manager, a architect, put project together. So, at any rate, we had a guy come and videotape his class, and then this friend of ours would take the video of the class, and he basically would download. Now we could do it on Zoom and have the
Mhm.
transcript right there, but
Right.
at that time he basically hand typed in the transcript, and from that derived this book called Romancing the Room, which you
Wow.
can get on Amazon or wherever. It's a fun little public speaking book. And any rate, so that happened, and in the process I started teaching with Jim, and that was like 25 years ago.
Wow.
So
And you guys are an amazing team, by the way. I've seen you in action at the dinner, and you really are just two peas in a pod. I mean, it's really a very, very cool thing to watch. Your dynamic and your energy is just palpable. It's very, very cool. Magnetic, too. So at some point, you decide to start a podcast. And well, actually, let me back up. So, teaching for the last 25 years at Stanford, what's your single most favorite thing about teaching that class for the last 25 years?
Oh, the best part of that class is to watch a student come in and give a introduction talk, a 90-second introduction talk of another student, and they're basically horrible.
Mhm.
And then to fast forward 8 or 10 weeks later,
Watch them develop. Yeah.
yeah, watch them develop, and you saw the results at that
Mhm.
dinner. Some kids obviously do better than others, but
Mhm.
there are some students that that make amazing strides in their public speaking abilities, which people should understand that public speaking, yes, it's an art, it's an incredible art, but it is very learnable. It is something that you can basically take and give skills to and put it together, and it all just takes practice.
You have to get over the fear. You have to get over the fear. And it's a big deal, right? That there are a lot of people out there that are more fearful of death or more fearful of public speaking than they are of death.
Well, you know, the line in our class was, Jim said, well, why do you think that is? That why do people fear public speaking more than they fear death? And one of the students said, well, if you're dead, you don't have to give a speech in public.
Right.
So, yeah, yeah, very interesting dynamic there. But anyway,
from the mouths of babes, baby.
Yeah, exactly. No, yeah, no.
I thoroughly enjoyed every second that I was up there with you guys. And by the way, if I can ever help you in the future, you have my number. I'm there. So that really was an amazing experience. Really cool. So at some point, you decide that you're going to start a podcast, and it's about commercial real estate, right? It's commercial SF commercial conversations. Can you talk a little bit about what it was that precipitated it? Like, one of the things we know is we're not quite 2 years old yet. We're going to be, in 4 days, we're going to be 2 years old as a podcast. We know that we have inspired roughly 60 people to start podcasts that we know of. Okay.
Oh, cool.
Can you talk about it's a commitment. I mean, it's, 98% of all podcasts don't make it past the second episode. Can you talk a little bit about what your frame of mind was, what it was that propelled you to do it?
So a guy named Dave DeBow, who lives up in Vancouver, up in Canada, just north of us here, for some reason, as with a lot of things, he sent me an email and said, do you want to be on my podcast? So it turned out I'm on his podcast. I'm not actually interviewing with Dave, but with one of the people that works with him. And so we do, the typical kind of podcast interview. What do you do? And yada, yada, yada. At the end of the podcast, after we turn off the record button, this particular person interviewing me says, hey, would you like to run your own podcast? And I kind of say, yeah, okay, sure. I mean, I'd been in public speaking for 25 years. And I thought, yeah, okay. And actually, Jim and I had started a little podcast that we called the Big Shuffle or something. Anyway, we tried to start a podcast. So at any rate, I say sure. And it turns out that Dave DeBow had this very sophisticated system for starting podcasts. He went through this whole AI questionnaire. Here's what you do, here's what you are, go through the list and so forth. AI spits out their responses, and lo and behold, out of all that comes the San Francisco Commercial Properties Podcast.
Right.
And now we are 180 podcasts into it, a year and a half, but so very similar to your kind of take on this approach.
So what's the single most important thing you've learned over 180 episodes?
Oh my gosh, they are, each interview is so amazingly interesting that you really have to kind of go to each interview. The one that I loved the most was with a guy named Sergio Nibby.
Mm-hmm.
Sergio's like 89 years old. He and his brother and his father actually started this company called Nibby Construction.
Mm-hmm.
This was back in the 50s, basically a teeny tiny little construction job. Sergio started out working for his father, and he was making $100 a week. $100 a week. And when he got married and was starting a family, his father said, okay, I'm going to raise your pay to $125 a week. So, this is an Italian immigrant that came to the US, went through Chicago, great story of basically bootstrapping your way. Now Nibby Investments does $350 million a year in construction, and they're a big operation. They do all sorts of nonprofit affordable housing work. Great company. His brother owns part of the Giants. It's a wonderful story to tell. So, at any rate, if you're listening to it, go back and listen to Sergio Nibby. But I think the one thing that I love to talk about, as I think you do, is what's the origin story of how somebody got from where they started to where they are now, and all the little steps that got them in there on the way.
Yeah, and that's the fun part for me, is the journey, right? The
Exactly.
sort of chicken and the egg thing, right? Like we talked about before. It's, I love to just hear how people have had and the mentors that have come in and out of their lives and all the things that have happened. It's just fun, and it's fun to watch people sort of evolve, right?
Exactly.
And kind
Exactly.
of like when you watch your students develop and that kind of thing. So
Exactly.
I have a question for you. Did Miss Universe Europe go do the Miss Universe pageant?
She that I've forgotten about that. Yes, she did, and she won.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah.
So we got to hang out with Miss Universe before she was Miss Universe.
That's exactly right. And she has, I mean, talk about stories. She came from Siberia,
Wow.
and she somehow got to Moscow, and some person basically saw her on the street and said, "Hey, I need somebody to run projects for me. You look like you could do that." And she ended up running construction projects for this group in Moscow.
Wow.
And then fast forward, she comes to the US and becomes Miss Universe. So
Unreal. I'll
Yeah.
tell you something and one of the things that I noticed in that class of yours that I was so honored to be a part of that, was to see these people who English is a second language for them,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
To watch them get up and talk it's already even if English is your primary language, it's hard enough to get up in front of people and talk, let
Exactly.
alone it being your second language, right? And then watch them sort of gut it out, right? Get up there, and it was really impressive. It really got me. It really touched me.
Well, that is the amazing thing about Stanford, is that these students come from, in that case, I think
Everywhere.
it's 17 different countries
Yeah.
that particular quarter.
Yeah.
And that was actually a low number compared to some quarters. So
Yeah.
just amazing people. I mean, this quarter we have people from China and Russia and Bulgaria. I mean, it's just amazing where they all come from.
Yeah, just incredible. Absolutely incredible. I cannot thank you enough for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. So if somebody wants to get a hold of you to have you help them with commercial real estate, how can they reach you?
You can look at my website, www.Trafton Group. That's Trafton. That's an old family name, traftongroup.com. Or just give me a call. My number is 650-888-6792. Be happy to talk to anybody that's interested. So
And then sfcommercialconversations.com is the podcast website, right?
Exactly. And you can get all sorts of fun information there.
Bruce, thank you again. I cannot thank you enough. This has been an amazing opportunity to be on your podcast, to be at that dinner with you, and then to have you on my podcast. Thanks for being here.
Well, thank you for having me, and I look forward to us doing more in the future.
Can I ask you a question? Did you know that there's a technology that uses sound waves that'll tell your brain what to do? There literally is. It's called newcalm.com. It can tell your brain to heal, tell your brain to sleep, tell your brain to do all kinds of things. It can get you fired up. It can be a pre-workout. Newcalm.com. And the promo code is Mike15. Newcalm.com, promo code Mike15 for an extra 15% off. Go today.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at the Mike Litton Experience.